All right, so yeah, this is a different setup. This is actually the setup I've been using for my streaming and for the gaming, but I really don't feel like moving my stuff around right now. So, a friend of mine, Yan Yan, asked me to review this video he made. It's talking about Epiphanius. Epiphanius is I guess you could technically put him as a late church father. He wrote against Origenism and Arianism. Personally, I'm not a fan of people who write against Origin. I like Origin a lot, but whatever. My key issue here is going to be writing against Origin in spiritual interpretations means that he already has a tendency against certain strings of tradition. So there's something funny about tradition when it comes to Protestantism. So they will reject tradition until tradition agrees with them. And there are different strands of tradition. And if they find a single strand that agrees with them, suddenly that strand becomes the true strand. Kind of ironic, considering they throw that allegation against Catholics. But anyway, let's check this out. Yan Yan, this is for you, buddy.
And the gospel, therefore, protects us by telling us the Lord himself said, "Woman, what is between me and thee?" To make sure that no one would suppose that the Holy Virgin is anything more than a woman. He called her woman. Otherwise, some might stumble into the nonsense of the sect from excessive awe of the saint.
And the gospel, therefore, protects us by telling us so on the occasion when the Lord himself said, "Woman, what is between me and thee? Mine hour is not yet come." For to make sure that no one would suppose, because the words, "What is between me and thee," that the Holy Virgin is anything more than a woman, he called her woman as if by prophecy, because of the schisms and sects that were to appear on earth. Otherwise, some might stumble into the nonsense of the sect from excessive awe of the saint. For what it has to say is complete nonsense and an old wives' tale, as it were. Which scripture has spoken of it? Interestingly enough, right in this context, he's asking for scriptural evidence. Which scripture has spoken of it? Which prophet permitted the worship of a man, let alone a woman? The vessel is choice, but a woman, and by nature no different from others. Doesn't sound like he believed the Immaculate Conception either. Like the bodies of the saints, however, she has been held in honor for her character and understanding. And if I should say anything more in her praise, she is like Elijah, who was virgin.
Okay, so I'm going to read the context real quick. And this is on refuting the Protestant self-authenticating canon with Joe Heschmeyer. This is specifically talking about Mary being the dormition or the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, and about, I guess in this point, the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. I tell you, Trent, 3 great videos in a row. Keep it up. May you find time to rest and keep the content fresh and at the level of quality that you have been firing on lately. Yan Yan responds, do you accept Trent Horn's speculation that Mary may have been both assumed after all of the New Testament books were written? I respond, hey buddy, haven't heard from you in a while. The traditions of Mary's Assumption or Domitian are ancient enough for me to accept as Orthodox tradition before we get to both the Eastern and Western Church ratifying this particular tradition. Besides that, accepting the Pope in the magisterium in my Western leanings and the ecumenical councils and holy tradition in my Eastern leanings, there are enough threads in both the councils and the church fathers, late and desert, that I can string together a probable narrative of how a niche belief became a dominant capital T tradition. For my anti-apologetics stance, which I know you appreciate, that meets the bar for acceptance. I'm sure it does not for you, but for me, Trent's case or defense of the tradition has nothing to do with why I accept and submit to it. Yan Yan responds, the tradition of Mary's Assumption or Domitian are ancient enough for me to accept as Orthodox tradition? Out of curiosity, what would be your approximate cutoff date for when someone could no longer be plausibly apostolic? Well, the wording here gets tricky for me. If we are talking strictly, I would say anything developing after 500 without at least a seed or implication arriving before 400, I would be hard-pressed to defend as part of the early or ancient church's collective understanding. But, and this is a big but, I don't believe private revelation is closed. And I hold that the bishops, both Western Catholic and Eastern Orthodox, do have valid apostolic succession, even if the branches have been severely trimmed. As you know, as you have watched my channel before, I accept development and refinement of dogma as holding to dogma, even if our current understanding doesn't match what the human recorders/reporters of the dogma would have intended. Kind of a framers of the Constitution perspective thing I got going on when it comes to an analogy between the Bible and the church with the magisterium compared with the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. with the three branches of government. Yet to be clear, I don't think private revelation, especially if rejected by the church body as an improper understanding, can override doctrine, let alone unchanging dogma. Much as how one senator or congressman submitting a law to change the Constitution doesn't actually change anything if the people, through their elected officials, vote against the proposed change. I think of how prohibition was rejected in the US, or how Arianism infected the church for so long. Eventually, the body itself rejected it. The body Catholic, both big C and small c, has not rejected the typology that supports the Marian dogmas. If it ever does, then you might have a stronger case for the belief being an accretion, as our dear brother Ortlund likes to put things. Then he asked me to review the video as this fits the 400 AD mark. I said I will, and he said he'll check it out. So here's the issue here with Yajun Yuan's objection. The mere fact that Epiphanius is saying that this wayward tradition exists shows that the tradition does have threads going back to at least before Epiphanius was around. So even if Epiphanius thought it was erroneous, there is that tradition already there. And that's before 500. So for me, yes, it's part of the ancient church tradition. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Yajun Yuan, I hope you appreciate this video. I hope to hear from you. Comment below and go crazy, buddy. It's always good to hear from you. All right, everyone. Have a good one.